Sparkling Streams is a partnership between farmers, volunteers, charities, government agencies and the North Wessex Downs AWIN-B partnership to enhance biodiversity and tackle water quality on a landscape scale in the catchments of the River Dun and the River Shalbourne flowing into the River Kennet. The North Wessex Downs, cornerstone of southern England's chalk landscapes and a designated area of outstanding natural beauty.
I'm George Hosier. I farm here at Wexcombe at the top of the catchment of the Dun and the Shall. What we do up here at the top of the catchment has an impact further down the river. So if we are allowing soil to leave our fields and go down the ditches and into the rivers, that has a knock-on effect to the health and well-being of the river further downstream. 6 years ago here at Wexcombe we changed the practices of tillage and how we establish a crop. We've moved away from all cultivations and we plant everything directly into the residue left behind the combine. We farm in a way that we are trying to improve our soil health by keeping the soil covered all year round. I'm standing here in a field in November time which is covered in a multi-species cover crop which we've planted to keep the soil protected and alive from the end of harvest in August until we plant a crop of spring barley in here in March or April next year. We're looking after the biodiversity above ground and below ground and trying to build our soil which will in turn hold more water, filter any nasties out of the water and allow it to percolate down into the soil and down into the aquifers below us. This allows for the water to travel more slowly to the river and be cleaner when it gets there. As rainwater hits the soil, it does so more slowly because it's slowed down by the leaves and any other residues on top of the soil. The soil is our greatest asset as a farmer and we need to hold on to it. And when it leaves our farm, it becomes a problem.
My name's David Lemon. I farm at Wilton near Marlborough. We're based in the lower point here where the North Wessex Downs catchment from Wexcombe runs down to here from the Hosiers and the Pewsey Vale comes down this way as well. All the water congregates through two channels that come farm through here, and 3 years ago we built a sediment pond to try and capture some of the water. Downstream we've seen the local duck pond filling up with silt which then flows into Wilton water which has been silting up and that goes out into the River Dun. We've also had local flooding. So it's been really important to me to try and do something we can about it upstream. So we set up a cluster group of farmers about 3 years ago, which we named Southern Streams. There's 25,000 acres of farmland, all with a similar mindset. So Southern Streams has a priority of water management, biodiversity, soil management, woodland management, and even actually communication. So I'm glad to be doing this video. Where this water comes down from Wexcombe and joins at the end of this pond here, we are wanting to divert that into this field here to create a marshland. So about half of the field that you can see there will be dragged back and the water will all congregate here and we'll create a marsh bed for various reasons. One, it will capture a huge amount of carbon. Two, it will filter the water far better, so we'll capture even more sediment. And three, of course, it'll be a wonderful haven for wildlife. This is the first of 3 sediment ponds that we've built in a system that goes in through the back of our farmyard and then down into the village duck pond and then on into the lake. We've got phosphate, nitrate, and I think the other big thing is soil sediment running downstream. The River's Dun and the River Shall feed into the Kennet. It's a chalk stream, it's a triple SI. It's really important to keep that as healthy a ground as we possibly can. So by catching sediment upstream, we can prevent it going downstream. Here we are at the village duck pond in Wilton, And the success story is that you can see to the bottom of the pond, which typically after a lot of rain, this would just be a brown silty mess. The fact that you can see the bottom means that the sediment ponds are working upstream. Here we are at Wilton Water. It's a 7-acre lake. It's a spring-fed lake, but it has various streams that come into it. What we've done on our farm so far is one stream that comes into the lake with the sediment ponds. And with sparkling streams, we hope to be able to do more to more of the land around here to protect the water that comes into this, which ultimately goes into the Dun, which then goes into the River Kennet. What we do upstream has a massive effect on the quality of the water downstream. One of the things we've done as a cluster group of farmers with southern streams is testing the water to see the quality and the purity of the water. And very interestingly, testing it at different places after different things. For example, the sewage works that comes into here, we are able to test the water and work out really where are our problems coming from. Here we are in a typical field of green sand on our farm, where we've taken the farming away from the watercourse that runs down through the middle of it. Being on green sand, we have a soil that likes to run if it gets saturated, and it's inherently high in phosphate, it's fertile ground. So there used to be a 6-metre margin here, and when I went into countryside stewardship, I was able to use the options of 12-metre water buffer zones to extend the margins wider to take the farming away from the watercourse.
Hello, I'm Charlotte Hitchmoo. I'm Director at Action for the River Kennet. We're here by the banks of the River Shalbourne, which is one of the unloved rivers of our catchment, really. It's one of the poorest performing in terms of its Water Framework Directive status, so we look at rivers to see how good they are environmentally, and this one really is failing. But it's a relatively easy fix if we all work together, and we have a vision to work with landowners and riparian owners and the community to really make a difference and bring these streams back to life. So the first thing you notice when you get into this bit of the river at the top of the Shalbourne here is how much silt there is on the bottom of the river. And if you're a trout or a grayling or any sort of small fish that wants to spawn in the bottom of the river, you need clear gravel, and this amount of sediment just makes it impossible for fish to breed. One of the things we'll be looking at doing is creating some flow deflectors to speed up a central channel that will clean itself. If we can narrow the flow, we can make the river do the work, and we'll be able to flush through a lot of this sediment. And of course that sediment's coming in over hundreds of years off fields that have drained into this river for years and years, and that's why it's so important to be working with farmers and landowners to change management practices so that we can keep the sediment and the soil on the fields and out of the river. This is a section of channel that's been modified over time to make it straight and uniform, and you end up with a very U-shaped channel, very little diversity. And in terms of creatures that want to live here, there's one type of habitat, and what we want to do is create a really diverse habitat so that there's slow flowing areas where small fry can shelter, so that there are marginal areas with good vegetation, so there's lots for water vole to eat, and if we can get a mixture of fast and slow, deep and shallow, we just create all these little niches for different creatures to live. In addition to habitat work here, we're also looking at fish passage to make sure that fish can swim freely from the bottom of the river right up to the top of the river. So we're just close to the sewage treatment works here, and this is one of the many sewage treatment works across the country that discharges, on occasion, untreated sewage into the river. So when there's just too much rainwater and foul water in the system, the sewage treatment works can't cope and they have to overflow into the river untreated sewage. So one of the things that we're looking at is ways we can reduce the quantity, the volume of water that ends up in the sewer network. So we'll be working with the primary school to put a rain garden into their primary school, and the rain garden will include lots of ideas people can pick up and copy at home in their own gardens to keep rainwater out of the sewer network, which will reduce the burden on the system and reduce the number of times that the sewers have to overflow into the river just to cope with the volume. So one of the other activities we'll be doing, and are already doing, is testing the water quality in the river. So we're testing nitrate, phosphate, and how turbid the water is. And we're using a really simple test kit. The Southern Streams Farmer Group are testing the waterways in their own farm areas, and then we've got ARC volunteers testing water quality the rest of the way down both the Shalbourne and the Dun. And that gives us a really good idea of where specific sources of pollution are coming from, and by testing regularly and building a time series, we can start to see whether there are fluctuations across the season or fluctuations in places in time. So slowly we're building a picture of where the cleaner areas are and where the dirtier areas are, and that helps us take action to work out whether we can reduce those inputs.
I'm Robert Nightstar, riverkeeper to the town and manor of Hungerford. The town and manor of Hungerford is an ancient estate, and we are part of the Southern Streams Farmers Group. This part of the Kennet that we're in today, historically has been very impounded for certainly several hundred years by the mill downstream of us. However, after a collapse in the structure at the mill, this section of river now flows much more naturally. So where I'm stood, this used to be a silty riverbed, no weed growth at all, very poor section of river. Now the river's been flowing freely for the last 3 years. The habitat has completely changed. You can see the benefits. You've got good flow, you've got good weed growth, you've got a clean riverbed. During the proposed project, this is the type of habitat which we wish to create on a much longer section of River Kennet, and also within the historic river channel. We aim to create another 600 to 700 metres of this type of habitat. A chalk stream like this is basically, it's an artery of life through a landscape. Clean, pure water is the lifeblood of the river. The river feeds much of what's around it. So a healthy river, a healthy environment produces a healthy fishery, and a healthy fishery is what we need to create the income to help maintain these environments. I'm now stood in the original course of the River Kennet, prior to a mill being built several centuries ago. This section of river, it's very degraded, it's full of silt, very little flow, very poor for invertebrates at the moment, very poor for fish life. Part of the Sparkling Streams initiative is to put more water down this channel and to create at least another 600 yards of prime chalk stream habitat. Chalk stream habitat is incredibly rare. I'm possibly now stood within 150 miles of in excess of 80% of all the world's chalk streams. So allowing easier access for fish to migrate up this stream is very important, because the ancient mill structure, the sluice gates, the weir, have been a barrier to fish passage in this area of the River Kennet, possibly since the 13th or 14th century. When we've restored the historic channel, that will enable us to re-wet these meadows, Undies meadows. There's in excess of 50 acres here. So basically there's an opportunity here of these meadows, which have been far too dry for far too many years, to be reconnected to the riverine corridor. So we're going to reconnect the river to the floodplain, which will re-wet the meadows, which will give us the opportunity to build a nature reserve, which will be of great value to the local community as well as the wildlife we anticipate to live within it.
Sparkling Streams, a vision for nature recovery in the North Wessex Downs.